right, so my name is Sansu Kalimo, and I would be going through some basic system administration procedures today with you guys. All right, so the first thing that we're going to look at is checklinks. All right, now when we talk about checklinks, there's a number of reasons why you may want to run checklinks or reconcile features. All right, so what tends to happen is that you may have been entering data and for some reason you might lose power or your network in the middle of a transaction, and you may have some issues with that data. Some of them, sometimes what you would find is that sometimes the data would post and it may create duplicates within the system, and that will tend to cause an issue. All right. Now, when you're running checklinks, you do have to keep in mind that yes, it does fix damaged data, but it also tends to also remove data from the database as well. So let's jump into how you run the checklinks feature. So in GP, right, you would go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, maintenance, and you would go to maintenance and then checklinks. So like I said, this is usually run when you suspect data corruption in the database, right? So like I said, power outages, for example. So the series that is available here is financial, purchasing, sales, inventory, and the checklinks can be run to review the information. Now, it is usually suspected that there is corruption, like I said, and what it does when you run the checklink, it reviews data in the accounting master tables against the data for inconsistencies. So when it finds that inconsistency, it may either correct it or remove that data. It is good practice to make sure that before you do run checklinks, however, that there is no one in the system, and also that you provide a backup before you run checklinks, because it is going to make changes to your data. So if your customer has been damaged or deleted, the utility would recreate the customer, right? Or if it is missing a table header, for instance, checklinks would go in and remove that corrupted data because it can't find the table header for the table line, right? So under each of the modules, you do have the logical tables. And in the logical tables, you can drill down as to what you would like to run the checklinks against. For example, you have work tables, which is unposted transactions. You have setup tables, which is your transaction setup information. You have the information that resides in your transaction tables, history tables, inquiries, etc. All right, it is important to perform this maintenance procedure on a monthly basis, right? Just to ensure that everything is okay within the system. So if you are running it against the financials, for example, you would select, say for instance, you want to check your unposted transactions under the financial series. You would select it. You can select all if you wish. Click insert and then click OK. right? You can print it to screen. You could also save it to a file and click OK. If there are any changes that is made, it would show up on the report. If not, the report would remain empty and it would show no errors found, right? So any orphan records that would have needed to be removed or any changes in the system that might have occurred would display within the report. And like I said, the backup is important because if for any reason you need to revert, if you're not comfortable with the changes that were made, you would need that backup. So you can definitely revert to that. And just think of checklinks as being able to check the health of your system. So it's like also running a Reconcile, right? Those things you should run at least once a month, just so that you can ensure that the data is consistent within the database. Now the Reconcile does not check master records. Instead, it checks your balances and your totals, right? So that's the difference between the checklinks and the Reconcile, right? It is also available, just like the checklinks, in all the modules for your SOP, your purchase order processing. So you would usually go to tools, utilities. You can go to any one of the modules and then you can click on Reconcile. This Reconcile will be for the receivables module. And then we would have the Reconcile feature for the SOP module. So if you go to each of the modules, you would see two Reconcile options. One would be for the purchasing module and one would be for the payables module. All right. So let's go back to the power outage example. There may be an example where you may be posting a batch and that power outage may cause an issue with that batch. So the Reconcile utility will go back to the detailed transactions and verify that the totals match the details, right? So you can run a Reconcile by going to, say it's a purchasing batch, you can go to Reconcile and you can click on batches, says batches, for example. You can select a particular vendor which pertains to the batch. You can select a range, or if it's just for one particular vendor, right? And you can click on process, right? You could either send a file or also print to screen. If there is any changes in the balances that is identified, it would display on the report as well. If there is no errors, you're going to get exactly what I'm getting here, which shows no errors found on this report. All right. Now, going back to before you do the Reconcile and the checklinks, like I said, it's important that you do a backup. Now remember, this is the basic system administration operations for those of you who are not familiar of how to perform these functionalities. So we are going to show how to do a backup. It is important to do backups on a daily basis, and dependent on how large your database is, some persons would do backups on a hourly or 4-hourly basis, depending on how large your database is. All right. So there are different types of backups, and we would see that when we go into SQL Server. So this is my SQL Server environment, right? And we are going to do a SQL Server database backup. With the different types of backups, there are a number of ways in which you can back up your database, right? Many of you may have IT persons who would perform a manual backup, or you may already have a standard backup procedure, which is a predetermined backup interval defined within your SQL Server already. All right, for those of you who may not have, we are going to show you how to create that backup. I'm going to show how to do a manual backup first, and then we can look at how to do an automated backup, which is a automated everyday backup. You can do full backups. You can also perform differential backups, and we'll just look at what is the difference between both of those. So in my SQL Management Studio, I have my Fabricam company, and I have my tool, which is my Fabricam, and this is what I'm going to use as my full backup. So what you would usually do to do a manual backup is that you would right click on the database, you will go to task, and then you will click on backup. Now it's going to present you with this window. You can choose if you want to do a full or differential backup. We are going to do a full backup, and in any backup that you choose to do, a full backup is always required first. Here you're going to define where the backup, you would like the backup, the destination of the backup to go. So this is where the backup would have occurred last. So you can click remove. Now this is not removing the last backup. This is basically removing the destination of that last backup that you have defined there. So if I click on remove, you can click on add, and here you can click on the ellipsis to select where you would like the data to go. Right, I currently have an old backup here. Right now, this backup is located on my C drive and in my Microsoft SQL folder, in a subfolder called backup. It's always important to name your backup in a meaningful way, just so you know what the backup is. It's always important. If you're naming it, I'm just going to say full backup, for instance. I'm going to name, put the name of my company, and I'm also going to put the date that I have backed up this database, right, with the extension back file. Right, so this is now going to be the destination on the disk in which my backup path is located, and I'm going to click OK. Now, after you have defined where you're going to store this backup, you will click on Options, and then you can click on Verify Backup when finished. Right? This does not matter. This option doesn't matter right now because you are creating a new backup set. If you had an existing backup set, you could have chosen this option if you wanted to erase your backup sets to back up the new media, right? But for me, I'm just going to create a new backup set. You do have the option to also to override the existing backup sets, or you can just append to the existing backup set as well. All right. So this is going to allow me to ensure that my backup is one that's a good backup and it's not corrupted. So I'm going to verify my backup when finished, and I'm going to select OK. All right, so it has verified and it has backed up my database. We can go to the location in which we would have created that backup. Right, so here you can see the backup file in which I've created, right, which is my full backup. Now, with the differential backup, it is important to note, like I said, with each of these backups, you need to also have a full backup, and you need to consider if your organization requires a differential backup as well. So say for instance, you would have had a full backup done today. Today is Wednesday, right? The differential backup would have been done on Thursday. So what that would mean is that the differential backup will only store the files that has changed since Wednesday, right? Since your Wednesday's full backup. So Wednesday you performed the full backup. On Thursday, you perform the differential backup. The change between Wednesday and Thursday, that is what is going to be stored within your differential backup. If it did a differential backup on Friday, it will only store the changes that were made since Thursday and so on. So it will basically be a storage of continuous changes as long as you have that configured. And like I said, however, it does require you to do a full system backup before it can be used. Now, once the occurrence of a full data loss, right? When a full system restore is required, only the last full backup and the last differential backup will provide all the data and the information needed when you have to restore to your system to use the databases, right? So just ensure that if you're trying to recover, this method is also very effective than a full system backup, because a full system backup only possesses the backup files as the last system backup. It also may lack information that was inputted into the system. So if, for instance, you decided to do a full backup and then throughout the day, you decide to do differential backups, you can still be able to restore at a point where the last bit of changes were made. That a full backup might miss because you might have only done a full backup at the end of the day, but at the point in time that you may also run that backup, you don't know if users may have logged in and also make changes to the system. So it's also important to also capture the additional changes using that differential backup. And also additionally, the differential backup is faster than a full backup because it only deals with the latest data changes. So the system, you can also be able to save on your storage space. You can eliminate your redundant files, for example, right? So it is faster and relatively is relatively easy, and when you're saving a single file during the system backup. So it allows you to gather that information as the users operate on the system and gather the information based on the changes that the users make throughout the daily processes. All right, so we're going to look at how to perform a differential backup, and we're also going to look at how to restore that differential backup as well. All right, so with the differential backup, like I said, it's the same process, but a full backup is required firstly. So we're going to go back and go to Task, Backup, and this time we're going to choose the differential backup type, right? We're going to remove, right, the last save destination, and we're going to add our file to the new destination, right? But we're going to also give it a proper name so we know what we are looking at when it comes times to restore. All right, so this would be 2/3/09/2022. All right, you can also click on verify as well, just to ensure that you have a good backup, and then click on OK. Right, and here we have our backup. Now we're going to restore the full backup, and here we're going to see how to restore a differential backup as well. So in our database here, we are going to restore the full backup. So we're going to click on databases, and we're going to click on restore database. So here we're going to select our database for our full backup. We're going to click on add. We're going to click on our full backup. We're going to click on OK. Right? An important step here is to go to our options tab. And here we're going to actually change the recovery state. The recovery state currently shows restore recovery. We are not going to select that option. However, we're going to select restore with no recovery, because with this option, it's now going to allow you to restore with an additional backup, right? And in our case, it would be our differential backup file. So here we're going to click on OK. I'm going to wait for that to restore. Oh, sorry. So always remember to override the existing database, and you could also close any existing connection. Currently, I have my GP open. So I'm going to exit. All right, and we're going to close any existing connections, and we're going to try that again. All right, so here it has been restored successfully. However, you would notice something different. On my database, it shows restoring, right? So it means that it has not completed the restore because of the option that we chose, which was no recovery, because we wanted to also add the differential backup, which would have been any changes that was made after a certain period, right? From whence we did the full to whence we did the differential. So here we're going to right click on our database. We're going to go to task, and we're going to click on restore database. Right, so here now we're going to click on device, and under the media, we're going to click on add, and I'm going to select my differential backup. I'm going to click OK. And then under my options, I'm going to leave it as restore with recovery, because this is the final backup that we're going to add to the system. I'm going to click OK. Let's just wait for this to complete. All right, so as you can see, our Fabricam company has been restored successfully. All right, so this is how you restore a differential backup, right, in SQL Management Studio. So just remember, guys, you do have the option. You don't only have to perform full backups. There are instances where you may need to capture a differential backup and restore that to your system. This is how it can be achieved. All right. Now, there are different maintenance plans that you can also perform. So this was the manual way of doing things, but you can create a maintenance plan within the system to achieve the same in terms of automatically or automating your backup procedures. So you can perform or automate your backups to do a full backup. You can do a differential backup. You can even do a cleanup. You can have that automated, and you can also check the logs to see and ensure that you're actually receiving those backups in the system. All right. So these plans can be automated, can be scheduled. You can tell it where you want the backups to be made, whether it's a full backup, whether it's a differential backup, right? So in SQL Server, you would go to your Management Studio here in SQL Server, and you'll go to Management. Now in Management, you'll see a couple of options here, right? The one that we want is maintenance plans. If you did have maintenance plans already created in the system, they would be listed under here, currently I don't have any maintenance plans created. So the two options to create a maintenance plan would be either creating a new maintenance plan or using the maintenance plan wizard, right? For this webinar, we're going to use the maintenance plans wizard. And you're going to click next. Here you can give it a name, right? And we're going to say this is our nightly backup. You can also give it a description as well. All right, so we're going to do a single schedule for the entire plan. There are a number of different tasks that you can have the maintenance plan do. You can have the task either on a separate schedule, but like I said, we are going to have it one package all running on a single schedule, right? It's really up to you if you would like to have that separately or on one single package. So for this nightly backup, you can do a database integrity check, right? That's just to ensure that the database that is being backed up is not corrupted. You could shrink the database if you would like. You can perform a full backup, right? You have the option to also perform the differential backups. You even have transaction log backups as well. All right. The one that we're going to stick with is the full backup. And we're going to run that along with the database integrity check. I'm going to click next, right? Now here you can actually state in the order in which you would like these things to run. So, and you have the option to move down or move up. So if you have a list of tasks to execute, you can state, okay, I would like the database integrity to be run first before it performs my database full backup, right? If you had a couple of other things, for example, you may want to shrink the database, then you may want to run the integrity first, then shrink the database, then do a full backup. All right, so once you're satisfied with the order in which you would like your task to execute, you will click next. Right, now here you reach where you define the databases that is going to use for the integrity task. It's going to ask you which database you would like to do this for. Are you going to select all the databases? Right? Is it just the system databases, or are you going to be running it against all user databases, but excluding your master temporary databases, etc.? In our case, we're going to select the databases that we want to do the backup against. We would like it for the Fabricam company and maybe the Dynamics company as well. All right. You have the option to ignore the databases that are offline, right? So maybe you want to check all the databases, but you wanted to ignore the databases that are in the offline state, and you may want to deal with that separately or at a later date. You do have that option to do so as well. Right? Once you have specified your databases, you can click OK, and just remember, if your databases is offline, you can back it up, but sometimes what happens, it would cause the backup to fail. So it is important, if you're doing all databases, to have this check, right? Just so it doesn't cause any issues when you're backing up your databases. All right. So here we have selected all our databases. We're going to click next. All right. And now you have the backup full database task. Here you can just have an overview of the tasks that you configured. So this is where you selected your databases. So here you would like to have the databases for Dynamics and also for Fabricam. And let's select OK. Right, the destination is where the directory in which you would like to define for where you would like your backup to be created. All right, so typically you want it to be ensure that there's a BAK file extension. So you can select a specific path in which you would like your backups to reside. Currently, mine is on my default path, which should be my backup folder in my SQL folder, and I'm okay with this. All right, so I'm okay with this folder. The backup extension, like I said, is .back, and I am fine with that as well. Right? With the options, you have the options if you would like to set the backup to expire. So you may not want to keep backups on your system after a certain amount of time. So you are able to set those database backups to expire after a certain time. So those can be removed from the system. All right. You can set a backup compression. I am not going to compress my backup file. However, if you do want to compress your current backup, you can do so, or you can currently just leave it as the default server settings. If you would like to just do a copy only backup, you can check that. And if you would like to verify the integrity as well, that is also an option. All right. You have the option to also backup databases across more than one file. Right, so you can add different destination files in which you would like to store your backup. So you may want to have it backed up against 3 locations, right? So you do have that option to store your backup databases and have them stored in the various locations. If you would like to have them on different drives, for example. All right, just in case something might happen to one of them in one of the backup files, you have it backed up somewhere else. So currently here, we don't have a schedule. So you are able to set a schedule for your backups. So it is going to be a nightly backup. It is going to be a nightly backup. Sorry. Okay, so for some reason my schedule is for some reason my schedule is grayed out. But with the schedule, you can select the date and time you would like your backups to be run. You can set it if you would like it to be a recurring backup, which is at a specific time until whenever. It could just be recurring until you decide to stop that backup from running, right? Once you are satisfied with your settings, you are able to have that report emailed. But however, to use this option, there's another configuration that needs to be done in order to have the reports emailed to persons. So this report would be a log report, and it would basically, you can set it for failed transactions, well, failed backups that has not completed within the system. It can send an email report stating that it did not back up that particular night. Or you can just write the report to the log file, and that can be viewed within the SQL Server, right? This location of this log file is in my MS SQL folder in program files. Right, so all your logs can automatically be written here. You can see all your error logs, or you can have your logs, like I said, emailed. However, you would have to set up an additional step for that to occur. Once you're satisfied with your options, you would click next. Right here, you can see the actions that are going to be performed. Is going to create a backup plan. This is my description that I used, right? Currently, it's going to perform an integrity check before it does a backup on my Fabricam company. The databases that I chose are listed here, and I am stating that I would like a full backup to be done, right? Currently, the reporting options is going to be sent just to my log folder on my SQL Server Management Studio file. Once you're finished, you can go ahead and click finish, and it's going to run through that backup. If it fails, then you would need to go in and check to see why that has occurred. All right. And once that's completed, you can check to see if you can see if there are any errors. If there were any errors, you can view the report. Currently, it's stating that everything has been successful. All right. So I am okay with this. So I'm going to X this out. Right. If you want to specify the schedule, I'm seeing that wasn't able to specify the schedule there. I'm not sure what happened. Because it was grayed out, I'm going to double click on my backup, and let's see if I can do so now. All right. So even though it was grayed out when we initially created the maintenance plan, I am able to select the schedule. So currently, as you are seeing here, there is no schedule created. So I can now come within this option window, right? And it's going to allow me to now create my schedule. You have different types. Like I said, you can have it recurring, right? Which is the most popular option that's used. If you want to have it as a one-time automated backup. You can set the frequency in which you would like the backup to run, whether it's daily, weekly, or monthly, right? And you can also set if you would like it to occur once at a particular time or occur every hour or every minute or every second. It's really up to you, right? The ones that is usually chosen, and you would probably use this option if you're going to do a differential backup plan. You may want it to run every 4 hours, right? So you can set that there, but because this is a full backup, we just want it to occur once, maybe at 11 o'clock at night, right? And with no end date. So our start date would be from today, right? And it would be continuously running until we decide to stop the backup, right? If you want, you can specify an end date, and that's fine as well, right? Once you're okay with your backup schedule, you can click OK on this window. All right. And that in a nutshell is how to do an automated backup within this window. Another thing that I want to show as well, let's just go back in. We can check the plan. There may be, for those of you who may want to check the backup, for instance, right? You can come within this window, right? This is basically what we just defined. So for those of you who may want to see the sequel, you can click on the view T-sequel. So this is the script that is going to run, right? So sometimes you may script out your backups, right? You can get the backup script here. This is exactly what's being run behind the scenes, because we're using the wizard. So everything that we have outlined, this is exactly what's going to be run for the backup of our databases, right? And once we are okay with this, you can save the backup, and that would take your backup to run every night per schedule, right? So I just saved it, and I am okay with my nightly backup plan. Now, if you want, you can run it manually. So if you do create the backup and you want to just test again to ensure that your automated backup is working fine, running without errors, you can right click on it and you can click on execute. And that is going to, currently my backup has an error. And here it's telling me that I can check the logs. So I can view the report. And here I can see that there's an issue with my backup, right? And it's telling me that my SQL agent is not running, so it cannot be notified of this action. And my SQL agent is currently disabled. So you can enable your SQL Server. Let's try to start it. All right, so there's a logon failure with my SQL Server agent. All right, so typically for your automated backups to run, your SQL Server agent should also be enabled. Right, you can just see what might have been wrong with the SQL Server agent. I think this one is 2012. Let's just see what it's using. Let's try to refresh. And let's try to execute it one more time. Okay, so it still failed with an error. Okay, so it's still saying something with the SQL Server agent. So I would have to check that next time. But once you have checked what the issue can be with your existing backup that you created to be ran on a nightly basis, right? That can be saved to your specific location and backed up throughout the night. I'm not sure what happened with this one, but I would have to check that issue after this webinar. All right. So that would be your nightly backup. Another thing I wanted to touch on as well for those of you was how to create a database that can be used. Say you would like to use a database for testing, for example. All right. So you may want to create a backup of a live database and use that against your test company. To do so, you would go to your GP Utilities window. You would enter your password for your essay. You would click next. And here you have some options. The options to create a company would be the create a company option, and you would click on process. Here it's going to allow you to identify a new company ID within the system. So for example, you may want to create this company called fraud. It may be a new production company. right? You do have the option if you would like to create the company database as a blank company database, or you would like to copy access from another company that you may have had in the system. What we are going to do is create a blank company, and that blank company, we would take an existing company and recreate a backup, and we'll actually use one of our existing backups and restore that over the new company. That new company is going to allow us to be able to, if it is this company is going to be live, or if it's going to be one that is, like I said, used for testing, right? But there's a final script that has to be run before that can be done, right? So the process would be, for example, you would create your new company, you would click next, you can select the location of your databases. I am fine with the defaults. I currently only have a C drive, right? Your log name, which is your LDF, and your MDF name. Once you're satisfied with everything on the screen, you would click next. Here it's going to run through all the tables and start creating them so that you can have your new database. Now, this may take some time. However, once this has completed, you're going to see in your SQL server that prod company located here, right? In order for you to be able to run the prod company, because in the initial stages, you are going to receive an error. And it's only because the intercompany IDs would be duplicated, because you're taking a database that currently exists and replacing it or restoring it on this new company database in which you are about to create. It's going to create an error. And that error would need to be rectified via a script. The script can be made available for those of you who are interested in creating a live company on your test database. That script can be made available to you. I would also paste that script in the chat, and that script is what would be run at the end after you have done your restore. Right, so just to give you an idea what it looks like I said, this is going to take some time, but after you reach this stage and you have confirmed that everything is fine in terms of your company name, right, your new devices in terms of what it is, your MDF and your LDF and your company location. Once you're okay with all of that information, you would click finish. And like I said, it will now go in and start installing that database, right? Once it installs that database, you can now restore your database, which is your existing database, to this new production database, and then you can run the script, and that script can be used so that you would not get an error, or you would not receive an error once you log within the database. All right. Let me see if I could send the script here. If not, I would have operations email the script out. Should be able to paste it here. Let's see. Okay, good. All right, so that has been sent. All right, so wonderful. So I am not going to let this run to completion because we would be here a while. However, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask. Like I said, this is an introduction to the system administration in terms of if it is you need to run your checklinks or your reconcile procedures, if you need to create your automated database backups or your maintenance procedures. This is how you go about doing so, right? The life of the test company, like I said, it's just a matter of restoring your database backup to your new company database that's going to be created here. And at the end, you'll be running that script against the script that I pasted in the chat against your company database, which is going to change the intercompany ID, which will allow you to enter. So that error that you would get if you don't run it, that's not going to occur. All right. So I have some time for any questions. All right, so I don't currently see any questions in the chat. So I'm guessing that this is pretty straightforward for you all. All right, we are going to have a part 2 and a part 2. Could I see what, okay, I sent this script. Let me see if I sent it just to the panelists. Okay, yes, I think I sent it just to the panelists. So let me resend the script and let me send it to all. Because I thought I sent it to everyone in the chat. 1 second. So let me send that script to everyone. Okay, so I just resent it. So everyone should be able to see that script. All right, and this script is run against the database in which you have restored against, which is going to be your new prod or your new test database. All right, if you don't run the script, you are going to receive an error attempting to log into the company. Also another thing to note, and I may not be able to do so while this is running. Another thing to note as well, and we could probably cover this in another webinar session as well. There is a way that we can create an automated restore. So the same way you can create an automated backup, you may want to create an automated restore as well. And that could be for the purpose of on a test environment. Say you want a test environment to always be up to date, right? We can have that, that restore automated as well. So I'm going to have a part 2 to this webinar, and we'll get a little bit more complex into more of the things that we can do as system administrators for Dynamics GP, and can go through that when we have another webinar held for the system administration session. Right, so when you restore to the blank company, see another question here. When you restore to the blank company, your test database name is going to remain. So if your test database name is prod, that's what you name it. So in the system tables, if you go to, let's see if it'll allow me to open a query window here. I think it's freezing a bit because I have this running. But essentially, there's a table called the SY 500 table, right? And it exists in Dynamics. I think I have the name wrong. Hold on. So currently I only have one database. So this SY0 1500 table, if you had more databases listed, more company databases that is listed. So when my production database is created, it's going to also have a line in this table that's going to show here. So currently the company that's created is Fabricam, and you can identify what you currently have listed here. So if we scroll across a little bit, right, we're going to see the inter ID, right? This inter ID is currently 2. If I created this company called Prod, right? And I decided to restore my test company, which is 2, and I restore it against Prod, my inter ID would show 2 in the table, but my database is going to be Prod. So that's where the script comes in. So the script is going to, you're going to run it against the table, which will be the new production company table, and it's going to fix the inter ID to reflect what it should be within the system, right? Because once you do that copy and restore, it's going to have the inter ID showing as a duplicate. And that's why you will get that error. So that script is going to actually fix that issue and fix the inter ID. And anywhere in the tables that reflect the inter ID 2 against the production database is going to fix all of that, which is going to allow you to now enter the system. So yeah, you're welcome. So that is why it is very important to run the script after you perform that restore, all right? Because it is going to give you that error. All right, so I think that's all the time that we have for today's session. Like I said, I am going to have a part 2. We are going to go more in depth. This was more of a basic introduction to the system admin, but there's so much more that you can do in GP.